Okay, we will move on to the next item, which is item number 3, which is a public hearing on Picabu Estates preliminary plat. I, as the mayor, will be recusing myself because I've had a financial interest in this property, and I will turn this over to Art Betke, our council president, and I will return to the bench on item number 4. Art?
Cheers. Okay, before we delve into it, I want to go over the way a public hearing works. I know some of you already know, but some of you may not. A public hearing is a quasi-judicial hearing, and it has to follow distinct order and legal parameters all the way through it. So the way it works is I open the public hearing, staff presents, and after the presentation by the staff, there's time for the applicant to come up and further provide information about the development. Following that, we hear citizen input in favor of, followed by citizen input in opposition, followed by citizen input of a general nature. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes. If there's a lot of people, we could go on all night with comments, so skip the preambles and just cut to the meat of the matter if you could, please. If you agree with somebody else, please say so. Also, after you finish giving your testimony, stick around because frequently the council has questions for you or may call you back to the podium at a later time to get some more information from you. After the citizen input, the applicant has a chance to clarify questions or rebut misconceptions. Following that, the public hearing is closed and the council launches into a deliberation and eventually reaches a consensus on disposition of the matter. And so with that, we'll open the hearing. Mike.
Thank you, Council President, members of the council. Before you tonight, we have a preliminary subdivision plat proposal for Picabu Estates addition to the City of Moscow. The applicants are Mark and Robin Pica. Just to orient yourself with the property, highlighted in red in the center of your screen, approximately 9.3 acres in size. To the west, you have Orchard Avenue running north-south. To the south, you have Evergreen Hills subdivision with Tamarack Drive, Ponderosa Drive. To the west, you have Highland Drive subdivision that loops around. To the north, you have rural residential properties with a series of freshwater ponds. And to the east, you have Blackwood Estates subdivision, which is comprised of Slonaker Drive and current extension of Landy Lane. So the proposal before you tonight is the subdivision of the 9.3 acre parcel. It's currently zoned R1, which is our low-density single-family residential zone. It's proposed to be subdivided into 20 single-family lots, which range in size from about 11,240 square feet to 22,754 square feet in size. You also have a combination of parkland, stormwater detention pond parcel, which is a cumulative of 18,341 square feet in size. And then you also have a parcel that's adjacent to Orchard Avenue with a proposed Landy Lane extension that's 8,536 square feet in size, and that's intended to be purchased by the City of Moscow for a future water booster station. So just a closer look at the property. We've got a topography map here. Each one of those lines represents a 2-foot contour interval. And so you see a series of drainages here. So this would be the freshwater ponds here to the north. You've got some natural drainage that heads to the south, ends up being picked up in a stormwater line there through the subdivision to the south. You also have another draw heads in the southwesterly direction here from the north. Looking at the comprehensive plan land use designation, currently designated as auto-urban residential, as well as properties to the north, and then properties outside of the city limits, current city limits boundary, which you can see the faint line here. Properties that are already been subdivided within the city to the west, to the south, and Blackwood Estates subdivision, currently designated as neighborhood conservation. So what that auto-urban residential designation means within the comp plan, it's intended for low or moderate density residential uses. We typically see about 3 to 7 dwelling units per acre with this designation. allows for a mixture, points to the zoning districts that allow for a mixture of single-family, townhome, and limited multifamily. Appropriate zoning districts for that designation would be the R1, R2, or R3 zone. In this circumstance, we have an underlying zone of R1, and the proposed subdivision's gross density comes in at about 2.15 units per acre, so we're even a little bit less than the typical 3 to 7 that you generally see. Orchard Avenue and Lanny Lane are both proposed, or actually Orchard's currently a designated collector, and Lanny Lane is shown as the extension of also a collector street. Looking at the zoning in the area, like I mentioned, currently zoned R1, which is the purple color there. You have subdivision to the south and to the east, which are also zoned R1. Across Orchard to the west, you have an R2, which is our moderate density residential zone. And to the north, the green represents the farm ranch designation. What the R1 zone is a low-density residential zone, and then it's appropriately applied in the following circumstances, where single-family dwellings predominate in the area. The physical character of the area does not lend it to more intense development, either by virtue of irregular topography. We've got restricted access, maybe it's division of land into lot sizes that are greater than the minimum required by the zone, or application of the comprehensive plan policies to the land in question. Looking at that zone's minimum lot size is currently 9,600 square feet in size. I'd like to remind you that proposed lots range from about 11,240 to 22,754 square feet in size, so they all meet that minimum. And you also have an 80-foot wide minimum lot width. Brings us to the proposed preliminary plat. On the west-hand side, you can see Orchard Avenue here. We've got the extension of Lanny Lane, which ends up connecting to the Blackwood subdivision to the east. You also have a future street stub here. This is Picabu Street. I'd like to point out the parkland stormwater detention parcel here in the center of the screen. You can see the rectangle here would be the stormwater detention pond on the east side. And this would be the future water booster station, which is intended to be purchased by the city of Moscow here on this corner. This is just a picture of the plat overlaid on a current aerial image, so you can see the street network connection, intersection of Highland Drive, Lanny Lane, and Orchard Avenue here. Follows the topography, ends up connecting with Lanny Lane, currently within the Blackwood Estates subdivision to the east here. And you also have Picabu Street intended to accommodate future development as the city grows to the north. Brings us to our thoroughfare plan, which is in the comprehensive plan. We have street designations within this plan, so as the city grows, we're ensured that the street network's sufficient in order to accommodate future growth. So the yellow dashed line would represent future collector, and so that would be Lanny Lane. Ends up extending from Orchard Avenue, which is a designated collector, through the proposed subdivision, through Blackwood Estates, and as the city grows to the east and is subdivided, will eventually connect to the intersection of Darby and Mountain View Road. Mountain View is currently designated as an arterial, and that's the blue line represents that. This is just a broader view of the same thoroughfare plan, just so you can get an idea of the entire future street network. We've got the extension of Lanny Lane here from Orchard. Mountain View ends up doing the 90, a couple places heading north. And you also have Trail Road, which is proposed to be an arterial. And so that would make up the street network in the area. Looking at their classifications of these streets, Orchard Avenue, like I mentioned, is a collector. Street will need to be widened about 5 to 7 feet with curb, tree lawn, sidewalk on the east side of the street. The plat actually goes all the way down. There's an Anderson property, so that's part of the plat, and it'll end up sidewalk will end up connecting with the Evergreen Hills subdivision to the south, where the sidewalk's right up against the curb, right up against the street. Lanny Lane is also designated as a collector. What that means with our current street standards is that it's a 70-foot right-of-way, 34-foot wide street section, which includes 5-foot bike lanes on both sides of the street, curbing tree lawns, sidewalks on both sides as well, and within that detail there is no on-street parking. How this relates back to our subdivision code, we have the portion that says the arrangements of streets and new subdivisions shall make reasonable provision for their continuation of the principal existing streets and adjacent or adjoining subdivisions. And that's why these roadway connections and connecting to adjacent subdivisions are so important in our long-range transportation plans. Looking at Picabu Street, that would be designated as a local neighborhood street, which would require a different standard. Instead of 70 feet, you'd have a 60-foot right-of-way section, 36 feet in width for the street, and that would be a 2-foot increase over the collector standard. But you'd have parking on both sides of the street, and you wouldn't have any bike lanes. And then the reason we have Picabu Street sub to the north, same subdivision code provision. And then to allow the proper projections when adjoining property is not subdivided in order, when that property is subdivided, to offer the logical and reasonable connection as the city grows to the north. We also have a block length that says it can't be greater than 660 feet. Well, if you look at the position of Picabu Street within the proposed subdivision, it's about at 600 feet, so it's about mid-block where it should be. And the Public Works Department has taken a look at the site distance at the intersection of the Highland Drive, Lanny Lane, Orchard Avenue, and they've determined that it's adequate for the current 30-mile-per-hour posted design speeds that are currently on Orchard Avenue, as long as there's going to be stop control on Lanny Lane as you approach the Orchard intersection. Looking at our water system within the proposed subdivision, existing mains are in Orchard that will be tied into. We've got a 2012 comprehensive water system plan that has determined that the existing system in the area has adequate potable and fire flows to serve the proposed development. And like I mentioned before, our city's planning on purchasing Tract A for the booster station. The current booster station in that area is about a block south at the intersection of Ponderosa and Orchard. Then a sanitary sewer system. We've got a main proposed along the Lanny Lane alignment. It'll ultimately be conveyed south. We've got the, like I mentioned before, we've got a storm line that goes through the subdivision to the south. Well, there's an easement there, and that'll the sanitary sewer line will also be extended within that easement to the south through that subdivision and tie into an existing main in Tamarack Drive. Looking at our 2011 comprehensive sewer system plan, is determined that the existing system is adequate to serve the additional flow that's anticipated with this subdivision. Storm sewer, also along the Lanny Lane alignment, ends up being conveyed to that stormwater detention pond, which is to the east of the stormwater or the parkland parcel. Got that existing 42-inch storm line, like I had mentioned, extends to the south through the Evergreen Hills subdivision. All stormwater management will need to meet the Moscow stormwater runoff control standards, which means they can't exceed the pre-development rate of the ground. The existing drainage from the north and existing storm line at the northwest corner will also need to be conveyed to the detention pond. So all the utilities aren't shown on the preliminary plat. Those will need to extend to the northern plat boundary. We also have some stormwater that ends up being collected in catch basins on Highland Drive, ends up extending underneath Orchard Avenue and just being conveyed onto the surface, the ground in the northwest corner. So that'll need to be collected and detained as well. And it'll be Public Works' recommendation that sewer and water lines be extended to the north subdivision boundary, because they're currently not shown like that, of Picabu Street. And this is also to allow future connectivity to property to the north, should that be developed at some point in the future. Just wanted to point out the 42-inch storm line represented in this pink dashed line here. You can also see the catch basins over in Highland Drive, ending up conveying to the northwest corner of the property. Taking a look at the parkland proposal, so the requirement for the R1 zone is 13,498 square feet. We've got track B, which is about 11,782 square feet, which is about 1,700 square feet short of the parkland dedication requirement. And so the applicant has proposed, if you're looking at the fee in lieu of for that 1,700 square feet, be about $540. And so the applicant's proposed to grade and seed the property at an estimated cost of around $2,000. Parks and Rec directors in support of that proposal, and he also took it to the Parks and Rec Commission, who recommended approval of the proposal, and they met on the 28th of January of this year. Looking at our pathway system through this area, the city pathways plan shows a separated path extending to the west and east of this property. Current collector street standard requires bike lanes, sidewalks on both sides of the street, and so it's Parks and Rec's opinion that the street standard for the bike lanes and sidewalks on both sides of Lanny Lane would meet the bicycle and pedestrian needs, and is within the spirit of that plan. He had taken that to Pathways Commission, and they recommended support on January 12th, and Parks and Rec Commission recommended support of the proposal on January 28th. And looking at the Pathways plan, you can see with the green dashed line represent a future pathway, and so you can see somewhere on the property we'll need a west to east connection from Orchard to Lanny, and we also show a future path extending to the north. And one thing that, or one item I should say that staff will need council's direction on is the collector detail. The applicant was concerned with the feel of the collector detail for the neighborhood. We had several comments from the neighbors concerned about that, as well as the lack of any on-street parking. And so this is current collector detail as Lanny Lane would need to be built. As city staff had met with the developer and worked on an alternative to present to the council, and that's what it looks like. So what we would do is still have a 70-foot right-of-way, so that would meet the collector standard. There's 70 feet shown on the preliminary plat. Instead of 2 bike lanes on either side, you'd need to increase the roadway by 2 feet and allow on-street parking on both sides of the street. You have 2 10-foot travel lanes, and so like I mentioned before, you have a street width for the collector standard, which is 34 feet in width. This would require expanding that by about 2 feet. And then on the south side of the street, which is looking to the right side of your screen here, you'd have a 10-foot wide path, which would serve as a pedestrian and bicycle path. It would meet the intent of the Pathways master plan. And then at some point in the future, when the road, maybe Lanny Lane extends all the way to Mountain View Road, city could come in and look at removing parking on one side of the street, creating a bike lane on that one side, still leaving parking on the other side, increasing the travel lane widths to meet the collector standard, and we'd still have the 10-foot wide path on the south side of the street, which would also connect to the parkland parcel. And thinking about the Pathways master plan as it extends to the north, it would also be staff's recommendation that 10-foot wide path be installed on the west side of that street in order to continue the pathway system to the north.